But tonight's talk is God's clues are everywhere. So what I'd like everybody to do is close your eyes. Just shut them. Okay, ready? All right. Now open them. All right, that's my son. Okay. Now, just the mere fact that you can see is a miracle. You think there's a little screen at the back of your eyes? No, there's sensors. You got all these light sensors that are sending these signals to your brain, and the brain's figuring out what those are to make that image. So what's back to, what your brain's probably seeing is that static, and then your brain is decoding it to put that image there, which is just a miracle. This sight is just incredible. How that comes about is amazing. And it says that humans have over 250 million photoreceptors with about 120 million rods and 6 million cones in each eye. And they're wired. And I heard Eric Hovind talking, and he was saying that the wires start growing towards each other. And they have to meet in the middle correctly for us to see. It's just incredibly complex. This isn't step by step. I mean, what good is half an eye? Darwin say if there's something out there that couldn't be put together in a stepwise fashion, his theory would fall apart. Well, the eye is it. It should have fallen apart, but they don't like the alternative. So that's a sideways look. And what's really interesting is the eyes go to each hemisphere, the nerves go. But there was one girl, she was born without half a brain. She only had half her hemisphere was there. And the amazing thing was that the nerves for the eyes that should have gone to the empty one went to the good one. And she can see fine. The brain is incredibly complex. And Bob Enyart has this trachea challenge. Anybody ever heard of P.Z. Meyer? He's an outspoken evolutionist it's the trachea challenge. He says, hey, PZ, can you show us how you see that muscle that goes through that loop and then comes back down? That's the trachea up in the upper right corner. He just says, how did that evolve? How, just framework, how would that happen? It's obviously designed. And I mentioned earlier, if you only had what you thanked God for, what would you have today? And I said, when you wake up in the morning, get up. That's my son. Does anybody know where we are? Has anybody ever been at that Hotel Marriott? Okay, this is the whole hotel with all the amenities. Anybody know where that is? Notice there's no car. The person, Kathy or Gloria probably knows. Where is it?
Boundary Waters.
There we go. Boundary Waters. You guys know the Boundary Waters? Notice there's no car there. You can't get there by car. There's no cars. There's no power lines. You get there by canoe. And so when you go there, you're just hoping that there's a tent that evolved, right? All these millions of billions of years, there should be a tent and a popcorn popper, right? Everything, it should just evolve there, but that never happens. This is our dining room. And behind my wife, you can see the washroom or the kitchen area. But none of that evolved. So how did we get it all there? Who'd like to portage that? And I go to be on vacation, so we just paddled as far as we could, and we set up camp, and then we did day trips. But we had everything, but you notice our kids aren't going to fit there, so they had to get there themselves, And so, now this is what I'm going to teach the kids tomorrow. When you see something, ask, where'd that come from? Where did that boat come from? Came from a boat factory, right? Well, where'd that factory come from? Well, people made it. Well, where did the people come from? So all your life, little kids, be asking, where'd that come from? Where did the loons come from? It all comes from God. If you keep asking that question long enough, it's going to be God, or they're going to have to admit they don't know. And it's like, if you don't know, I don't want your faith. That's pretty weak. And to get it all there, we had 4 people in the front of that. But that was, and then on the way home, we're listening to Adventures in Odyssey, and it's the flood one with Noah, and it's just a downpour on us. It's just, that's good anemones. All right, everybody touch your belly button. This has to do with Mother's Day. At one day, right now, you can breathe air, and it goes to your lungs and it circulates around your body. At one point in time, that belly button was hooked up to the placenta, to your mother, and you were living in fluid. The lungs going to the heart weren't going to do any good. You got all that nutrition and oxygen from the placenta. So that's all hooked up. So how do you go from living in fluid to living in air like that? It's a miracle upon miracles. This is from Dr. Cazell, and he spoke at our TCCSA, Twin Cities Creation Science Association meeting, and he's just great. And you know what? You guys can listen to it too. Go in and get the links. A lot of these are Zoomed, and so he's talking, and he's a doctor. And when he was born, he was premature, so they put him in a shoebox and a light, and I kept him warm. And he's talking about all these amazing things, and he's diagramming and using all these big words, and I just go, wow. I'm glad he knows what's going on. But in a nutshell, when they cut the umbilical cord, the pressure drops. So there's a valve in your heart that slams shut and becomes a wall of the heart. And then the ductus arterius aortus closes, and the venous closes, all these, the ones to your liver, and the umbilical cord vein closes, the umbilical cord artery closes. All that has to shut off and pinch for you to live in air. And then that miracle, it has to happen the first time, because it's not, you can't get like 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4. You have to get all of them right. And that's, if it doesn't work, you're not going to reproduce. You're not going to live. And this had to happen. This just came about over time. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Has anybody ever done this? You catch yourself doing whatever, skydiving or whatever you guys like to do in Nebraska. All right. It's a miracle in itself, because what if it just clotted up all the time? It clotted up when it shouldn't. It's got to clot only on the skin and not inside. Because if it clotted up too soon, you can't pump the blood. But if it didn't clot up at all, you're going to bleed to death. And this is, I'm going to give you some links or some websites that you can write down and go through and play with them and learn some of them. This is David Reeves.
Blood clotting requires what's called a cascade. This means that each step is vital for the next step. You can't skip a step in the cascade, as each one is dependent on the previous step. Now, the blood clotting cascade requires over 100 steps. Each step must be in place the first time an animal is cut, or it will slowly bleed to death. How did over 100 steps just happen to all be in place at the right time? Having half the steps is no good. Having 99 steps is no good.
Yeah, it had to be all there all at once, and this is supposed to just happen by chance. We don't have a clue what's happening. We just put a Band-Aid on and we go on with life. And if you want to see more of these, it's David Reeves Ministries. It's R-I-V-E-S, and he's on YouTube. And you go there and he's got these different channels or lists, and this is The Heavens Declare. And he's really good. And I've been at a museum, and I've asked this a couple of times, even at the park. I like to help them think. We're playing baseball at the park on Saturdays one time with the kids, and it was fun. And a bird comes flying and hits the back of a bench and drops there. And we all go look at it, and it's like, hey guys, where'd that bird come from? And he goes, from a nest. Yeah, but where'd that come from before that? You know, from another bird. And where did that bird come from? You know, we could have done that for millions of years. And then finally Ben said, God made it. And I said, that's right. God made the first bird. That's right. You're going to go to school and you're going to learn that it came from some, it came from some amoeba or fish or something. There's no evidence for that. It's not true. And so, what came first, the heart or blood cells? Oh, that's what I asked them too. What came first, the heart or blood cells? And they said the heart. And so I said, well, what came, what good's a heart without blood cells? Oh, the blood cells. What good are blood cells without a heart? It had to be fully formed, fully functional. And I did the same thing at the Mastodon Museum at St. Louis. And then they started stalking me. I couldn't take pictures, I took a picture of their video, and he goes, you got to delete that. And so I go, okay. So anyhow, but it had to be, and I said, I'll give you that. You can have the first blood cells with the first heart in all this time, in this whole world, at the same time, at the same place. What good is that without lungs? Or what good is that without a nervous system or a digestive system? We have vital organs for a reason. How do you evolve vital organs? This has to be fully formed, fully functional, right from the get-go, or we're dead. And the most advanced machine on the planet, and yet they will tell you it had no designer. I don't have enough faith to believe we came together by chance. And they'll say, well, in all this universe, all these planets, the chances are we're just the lucky one. And I said, okay, so does that mean that someday you're going to open up your dryer with all the people in all the world washing their clothes, and it's going to open up and it's all going to be folded? and the socks are all going to be paired together without any missing. You know, is that going to happen? But yeah, they go to great lengths to keep their faith. So basically, it's irreducible complexity. You know, if you have a car out there, you can take off the fenders, the lights, the windshields. It's still a car. It'll get you there. But if you take one of these things out of a mousetrap, it's not going to work. All those things have to be there. It's not going to work. And what good is half a mousetrap? And your body your cell is incredible. I mean, you need the DNA to make RNA, and you need the RNA to make proteins, and then the DNA is made of proteins, or you need the proteins to make DNA. It had to be fully formed, fully functional, right from the get-go. All right? And I spend a lot of time at St. Cloud State. They like me so much. And talking to students, they'll say, you know, if I meet an evolutionist and they say, there's no God, I don't argue with them. I say, okay, you know, have it your way. Without God, how did life begin? And they'll say, well, science has it figured out. And I said, no, they don't. You could have made $1 million if you could prove how life came from non-life. That was the Origin of Life project, a secular organization. $1 million, 13 years, it's on the table, nobody could do it. And now it's $10 million. You want to make $10 million? Yeah, prove how the DNA information organizes itself naturally. $10 million. They don't have it all figured out. And sometimes that's what I hope for. I just try and help them see that they have faith too. They have faith in unknown processes where we have faith in God. And this one, oh man, this is getdebunked.org. This is Carl Kirby, getdebunked.org. Everybody got that? Getdebunked.org. And I play this on my Bluetooth speaker as students are walking back and forth to class. Okay, so just imagine this being played at a secular college.
Lots of people say there's no evidence for God. Well, we're going to knock that one out in 3. I'm just going to have to keep it simple, throw in the old 1-2 combo, get in and out real quick, and let you fine folks chat all about it, okay? Punch 1 I'm going to call the info uppercut. When's the last time you walked into a library and asked, hey, where are all the books that have been written by mindless products of natural laws? The librarian would probably laugh at you and tell you that no such books exist. And they don't exist because they can't exist. Why not? Because first of all, it's just common sense. The words that form the message in books always originate from a person with a brain. Or to say it a bit more scientifically, the message of the book, the purpose, comes to be understood by the orderly placement of the words, design, and information. Information. Now, anytime we find info, these basic laws always apply. Number 1, matter doesn't spontaneously produce information. Number 2, only a mental source, intelligence, can generate new creative information. In other words, just like those books that couldn't originate without a mind, neither could life. Why not, you ask? Because we know that DNA contains information. Therefore, the laws of information science apply, which means the information in DNA couldn't have spontaneously generated, and that a mind is behind the information. Period. No exceptions. Look at it this way. The simplest life form we know of is an amoeba, and it contains as much information in its DNA as 1,000 complete sets of Encyclopedia Britannica. So, are we to believe that there's no way a message in a library book could spontaneously generate, but far more complicated messages in DNA that contain 1,000 times more information could have? Not likely. You see, when it comes to life or anything else that contains information, the laws of information science confirm the necessity of a creative mind. And guess what? In the very first book of the Bible, it just happens to mention that. In the beginning, God created. Bam! Uppercut lands on the chin. And now here comes the indefensible head blow. We'll call this the nada big bang bing swing, the KO to the claim that there's no evidence of God, the law of causality, left hook of doom. It goes like this. Everything that had a beginning had a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. Now, either something caused the universe to come into existence, or nothing caused it. I might not be the smartest guy behind the telescope, but honest, practical, everyday thinking's going to lead me to the latter. You have to work pretty hard to conjure up a way that nothing did it. You see, it's pretty improbable, nigh impossible, to account for design, information, and cause if the universe just exploded from nothing. Smack! And while we're on the topic, where did the matter come from that exploded? Are we really to believe that there was nothing and then it exploded, and now the exploded nothing is something, and we just happen to be smart enough to discover and understand the very laws that prove the opposite? And if the general understanding of the law of cause and effect is true, how can matter come from a lesser cause like nothing? I mean, come on. I don't have a bunch of letters after my name, but even a monkey knows better. And yeah, I snuck in a couple of extra jabs in there, so sue me. Now for some parting words from our sponsor, the Bible. It tells us in Romans 1:20 that since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. It also says that people actually know the truth, but they reject it, which explains why even though there's overwhelming evidence that there is a God, evidence won't convince the unwilling. Sad but true. So there you have it. With just a couple of meaningful blows, the claim that there is no evidence for God is down for the count, amigos. In other words, it's been debunked. Adios.
Adios. So how'd you like to hear that going to class? And this is a link online so you can share it. So I've shared this on media Facebook pages. You know, if there's a tragedy like a shooting or something, they always try to steer it to gun control. And my question is, hey, did that kid learn that people were mutated animals in school? Did he learn that there's no God? And then I'll post and then I'll link it to that. So I'll frame the conversation in that direction, because beliefs have consequences. And if there is no God, well, that's a whole nother talk. But our DNA, this is the language of life, and a lot of boring stuff. But I just want you to understand how complicated it is. You know, your DNA is getting hundreds of trillions, it's got 100 trillions of cells and 3 billion base letters, and there's about 1 million DNA letters are damaged to a cell on a good day. So there's a DNA repair system putting together the DNA that's falling apart every day. So my question is, what evolved first, the DNA or the repair system? You notice how it has to be all there? And I don't really understand what's happening here, but it's complicated.
What you are about to see is DNA's most extraordinary secret: how a simple code is turned into flesh and blood. It begins with a bundle of factors assembling at the start of a gene. A gene is simply a length of DNA instructions stretching away to the left. The assembled factors trigger the first phase of the process, reading off the information that will be needed to make the protein. Everything is ready to roll. 3, 2, 1, go. The blue molecule racing along the DNA is reading the gene. It's unzipping the double helix and copying one of the 2 strands. The yellow chain snaking out of the top is a copy of the genetic message, and it's made of a close chemical cousin of DNA called RNA. The building blocks to make the RNA enter through an intake hole. They are matched to the DNA, letter by letter, to copy the A's, C's, T's, and G's of the gene. The only difference is that in the RNA copy, the letter T is replaced with a closely related building block known as U. You are watching this process called transcription in real time. It's happening right now in almost every cell in your body.
There's no way that came about by life or by chance. And you got this thing called the kinesin. How does it get the protein to go where it needs to go? It's this kinesin pulls it along these microtubules. And I saw that, and it's like, how does that microtubule know where to go? And my son saw it and says, well, where does it get the energy? And that's ATP synthase, where it's like an electric engine in there. It's got a modem and a motor and a statum and all that stuff. But anyway, when they look at the mitochondria DNA mutation rate, they would expect if we were here 50,000 years, we'd figure we'd have 300 mutations. But we haven't been. We've been after 6,000, that's what we would predict. And what is the actual? The actual fits the 6,000 for mitochondria Eve. And Ann Gibbons, she did a report on this, and she actually said it looks like the first woman was 6,000 years ago. But we know that can't be true, and then she went off and made it bigger. And the thing with, this is chirality. Notice your hands are not the same. They're mirror images. One's right-handed, one's left-handed, and they call that chirality. And this is a PhD guy. He owns patents. He understands chemistry and all that. And let's see what he has to say. You know, how random chance natural processes can create proteins with thousands of left-handed molecules. Proteins are all left-handed if you're alive. If you're dead, then it goes back to a 50-50 mix. And then also create DNA with billions of right-handed molecules. And it's like, how in the world does that happen? He says, the reality of chirality made more than any other evidence did more to convince me of the reality of the now all-powerful Creator. We are incredibly complex, folks. Incredibly. There's no way we came together by chance. Okay, pop quiz. What's the most complicated thing up here? Who thinks it's the flash drive? Who thinks it's the dime? Who thinks it's the cottonwood seed? Who thinks it's the acorn? Who doesn't know? Okay, all right. The dime. That's probably the simplest thing, right? Just a stamped metal. How long do you think it would take to evolve? Right? It's got information on it. Dead giveaway for intelligent design. You know, that flash drive's pretty complicated. I can't make it, but people can. Somebody can. How about that cottonwood seed? What's that going to turn into? Well, how about that acorn? Those things are life. People can't make that. And just think what God's designed. I think the most complicated thing is because it's smaller, is the cottonwood seed. What did God put in that cottonwood seed? He put in an excavation business to dig a hole so it has a place to go to root. He put in a lumber company. So, I mean, this is what it turns into. The one on the right is a cottonwood tree. The one on the left is an oak. And that oak will produce, 17,000 acorns every year. And there's a chemical factory in there, changing the sunlight, using the sunlight to break open a water molecule into oxygen and something else. Incredibly designed, and then it makes itself. It is way more complicated than anything that we could ever come up with. And ICR.org, no, this is on YouTube, ICR, Institute for Creation Research. They've got 50 one-minute clips that explain a lot of things. And this happens to be the Fibonacci sequence. Has anybody ever know what this Fibonacci sequence is? Oh, there's some people excited to hear this. Here we go.
In the Fibonacci sequence, the first two numbers are 0 and 1, and each following number is the sum of the previous two numbers. As the sequence climbs, the ratio of two of its higher values nears the golden ratio, or phi. These special numbers often occur in nature, like in the spirals on a sunflower. The same patterns show up in the circular layers of a pine cone or pineapple, and in clusters of conifer needles. So, what does all this mean? Well, evolution can't explain the development of mathematical laws, but the Bible can. Scripture solves this mystery by pointing us to the truth of the intelligent Creator. God created all things, both visible and invisible, like math. So next time you have a math problem, remember the sunflower and praise God for all He has created.
And did you know you got a Fibonacci sequence in your hand? This is great. Just love it. And you look at these curves, it's like in a random process, how come they're all the same? And I'm thinking, this is God shouting, look at me, look at me. And so in your hand, take a look.
Finger bone lengths follow the proportions of the Fibonacci number sequence. The sum of the smallest two segments of a finger equals the length of the third, and the sum of the second and third equals the length of the fourth bone. Your hand is a mobile golden spiral, perfectly balancing strength and dexterity.
Golden spiral. Let's start looking for these golden spirals. And this is, let's see, from Gizmodo.com. They talk about the DNA. It's got the same, as small as we can look in a telescope, and you look at the DNA, it's got that same ratio. The DNA molecule measures 32 angstroms long by 20 angstroms wide for each full cycle. It's the double helix, and it's basically the Fibonacci series right there. And they got that same curve on shells and goat's horns and spider webs. You got that same thing. You zoom out a little bit farther, you got that same thing on a hurricane. And you zoom out way far, you got the same thing on a galaxy. And it says, spiral galaxies appeared to defy Newtonian physics. As early as 1925, astronomers realized that since the angular speed of rotation of the galactic disk varies with the distance from the center, the radical arms should be curved as the galaxy rotates. Subsequently, after a few rotations, spiral arms should start to wind around a galaxy. But they don't. Yeah, it's not billions of years. These are brand new. Yeah, but they try to invent, they call it the winding problem. They try and throw dark matter into it to make it work, or dark energy. And so when we got the sunflower, the pine cone, and the number of petals, for any of you that like flowers, check this out. The number of petals in a flower consistently follow this Fibonacci sequence. Famous examples include the lily, which has 3 petals, buttercups, which have 5, the chinseri 21, daisy 34, and so on. And then it gives evolution the credit. Listen to this. Phi appears in petals on account of the ideal packing arrangements as selected by Darwinian processes. Darwinian processes do not select, but they try and squeeze it in there whatever they can. That's their God. They give them homage whenever they can, even though that doesn't make sense. Each petal is placed about whatever. Okay. And now we're going to move on to math. How about, who's ever heard of fractals? Fractals. This is a mathematical formula that's graphed out, and it looks exactly like what's in real life.
The Mandelbrot set of numbers reveals a secret code that went undiscovered for thousands of years. While mathematicians can plot this set by hand, today's computers show with great precision that beauty is built into numbers. And when you take a closer look at the Mandelbrot set, you see the pattern goes on without end. This is an example of a fractal, a type of structure that repeats infinitely on smaller and smaller scales. Snowflakes have a fractal quality. Why is this? The laws of nature responsible for snowflake formation are mathematical because they stem from the mind of God. Fractals occur both in math, which is abstract, not made of atoms, and the physical world, which is made of atoms, because they have the same designer. Lightning branches occur in a fractal pattern, and so does broccoli. If the universe was formed by chance, why would nature follow mathematical rules?
Yeah, exactly. Why would it? And Jason Lyle, anybody heard of Jason? He does such a good job. I love his logic tape, his logic lessons. He's really, really sharp and yet really understandable, and I enjoy watching him. The thing on the right is a fractal. The thing on the left is a fern. The thing on the right is just a mathematical formula being graphed out. The same thing there. The thing on the, let's see, maybe I got this backwards. Same thing there. Why does a mathematical model follow such, make a design like that? And this is the evolutionist's worst nightmare. When you see a butterfly, you know, because butterflies, they start as an egg, they turn into a caterpillar. Caterpillars can't reproduce. They don't have any reproductive organs. They have to turn into a chrysalis and liquefy their whole body and put it all back together. And they can't, and then come out of the chrysalis. And they have to break their own way out of the chrysalis. If they're struggling and you help them, they can't fly anymore. The process of breaking it out squeezes the fluid from their body into the wings, which gives them the ability to fly. If they don't do that, then you hurt them. It's like John Wooden would tell his players, the best way to get something is to earn it. You know, earn it. If you give somebody something that they should do for themselves, you hurt them. And so that caterpillar, it has to get all the way through. How does a butterfly evolve? You know what? If it gets 10% through the chrysalis, it's dead. End of gene pool. 50% end of gene pool. 90% end of gene pool. Even 99% end of gene pool. It had to be fully formed, fully functional, right from the get-go, and it's designed like that. And all right, what's this? Platypus. Yeah, what's different about a platypus? Anybody know? Yes.
It's a mammal that lays eggs.
Mammal that lays eggs. Bingo. Very good. Anybody else? Anything else? What's different? You know, if we evolved from common ancestors, what in the world? It's got a tail like a beaver, bill like a duck, fur like an otter, spurs like a rooster, webbed toes like watered birds, poison glands like reptiles, hollow spur like a viper tooth, lays eggs like a bird, echolocation like dolphins, sonar like whales, short legs like reptiles, makes nests like a bird, leathery eggs like turtles, babies have teeth like mammals, leathery bill unlike any other animal, and totally unique electrical sensors, different from sharks and rays. What was the common ancestor there? You know? Yeah, I think God just made that to make evolution look really stupid.